Dedicate two of our very precious rainforest conservation initiatives in honor of Her Majesty the Queen for her tireless service and dedication to the Commonwealth. Singapore is actually one of the most dense cities in the world. If you think about it, we have more than 5 million inhabitants. On an island that's just over 700 square kilometers. Indeed, when Britain first arrived on these shores, we was only about 500 plus square kilometers. So we've tried hard to expand, but it's still a very, very small place. So if you divide the number of inhabitants by that very small denominator, you realize this is probably one of the most dense cities in the world. But I also hope that over the last few days, and certainly if you've ever flown over Singapore and looked out of the porthole, you will notice that you see tall buildings and tall trees. And that's because, fortunately for us, the planning paradigm for Singapore has been to be a city in a garden. It used to be, we wanted to be a garden city, and we said, no, that's not enough, not ambitious enough. Let's be a city in a garden. And that comes back to this point about tall buildings and tall trees. You see, in order to conserve your forest, in order to maintain green cover, it means you've got to stack people, industries, commercial use, and all the other essentials of life into tall buildings. And that's why you see this appearance, this trademark feature of Singapore. And you will also have noticed that even in the city proper, every patch of land, no matter how small, is assiduously planted with grass, with shrubs, with trees. And we make a conscious effort to develop and connect green corridors and buffer zones around our rainforests in order to cushion them from the effects of urbanization and to cushion us from the effects of a concrete jungle, which would otherwise be the outcome. Now that more than half of all humanity in the world lives in a city, in fact, this concept of a city in a garden has become, I believe, even more relevant because we hope to offer ourselves as a working model of the future. That you can come to Singapore and say, yes, it can be done, and perhaps this is the way it should be done, and I can take lessons home, modify it, apply it, and move on from there. So these two rainforests, the 6-hectare tract in the Singapore Botanic Gardens and the 163-hectare Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, frankly, at a global scale, they are tiny, they are minuscule. But they're very precious to us. Although it just, for instance, although it covers only 0.02% of Singapore's total land area, the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve houses more than 40% of Singapore's native flora and fauna. Or let me put it another way. Within tiny Singapore itself, because we are a tropical rainforest, there's more biodiversity here than the entire continental United States. Think about that. So the inclusion of the Singapore Botanic Garden rainforest and the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve in the Queen's Commonwealth Canopy, we believe contributes both intellectually and literally on the ground to the richness and diversity of the forest ecosystem in the Commonwealth. Even this beautiful garden, this venue that we are seated in, that we're going to dine in, I have to tell you, we are standing on reclaimed land. It's all just sand. It was covered by the sea. But we are one of the few first world cities that has had a chance to build a new downtown. And that is in the larger precinct which we are in, about 364 hectares. But these 364 hectares took decades to reclaim, took enormous expenditure. But we set aside 101 hectares of this very precious land be gardens by the bay. I say that again so that you understand how much priority we place to ensuring the garden concept and to protecting rainforests. There's just two more points I want to leave with you tonight. And that is, even as I cite examples of reclaimed land and setting it aside for future greenery, but in fact, there's a more important principle at stake. And that is, here I think we can give credit to our pioneers, and indeed to the United Kingdom during our colonial days. You see, the point is this: if you are going to preserve, or if you want to have virgin rainforests, you've got to make sure you preserve them in the first place, because these are irrevocable decisions. Land, once cleared, will never be the same. So this value of leaving something behind for succeeding generations, not taking irrevocable decisions, unless you really have to. We are beneficiaries of this attitude and these values. And the Singapore Botanic Gardens, again, you know, was established during the colonial period. And that little 6 hectares of virgin forest is because the colonial authorities decided, let's leave it well alone. So let's remember and let's celebrate these attitudes that have been present in our past and in the pioneer generation. Finally, as we look forward to the future, I know there's been a lot of discussion in the last few days about innovation and technology. Agriculture has actually been around for 8,000 to 10,000 years in human history. The great breakthrough occurred, frankly, only within the last century or two with the agricultural revolution in order to feed people. We need another revolution if we are not only going to feed people, but also to maintain our planet in ecological balance. So there is an even greater and even more pressing need to apply our minds, to apply new technology, new ways of organizing ourselves, new ways of using our land in order to do more and hopefully with less. Today is a special day because today is the day that the Paris Agreement on climate change comes into force. And I think this confluence of dates and events is very fortuitous, but I want to thank all of you for making the effort to come to Singapore. I hope you've had a wonderful time here, and I wish you all the very best and journey mercies. Thank you very much.